Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about a lot of the misconceptions that are out there about training heavy, training with maxes, training with heavy singles, because it's one of those things that every time people bring up, and it's always out of the bodybuilding circles. By the way, people who tend to get hurt all the time. It's always out of these circles that you see people talk about, well, yeah, I mean, we do need to get stronger. And when we say go heavy, we don't mean doing a 1 rep max. And it's like, well, why not? Why is everyone scared of 1 rep maxes? Why do people think that suddenly heavy 5 rep sets are heavy? And why is it that people think that training to singles are dangerous? I'm not talking about when you grind all the way or form breaks down or you get pinned under a bar. I'm not talking about any of that, because that's a failed single. That's above a 1 rep max. And that's usually not taking proper safety precautions. Right? That's not taking proper safety precautions. But if you really think about it, how do people get hurt even if it's due to using heavy weight? How often is it due to doing singles? Not that often, other than bicep tears and things on the deadlift, which are completely preventable. I mean, usually rep work is what hurts you on deadlifts. It's bouncing it off the floor. Too slow of an eccentric, something like that. People don't get hurt pulling a heavy single. It's very rare. Very, very rare. Again, barring bicep tears. You see me pulling with a hook grip there. Can't happen, can it? I see far more people get hurt on a heavy 5 rep set or an 8 rep set or something like that. I've seen a lot more injuries in my life on those things. And you're more likely to get overuse injuries. So let's come over and let's think about this for a moment. You guys have seen me do more heavy singles than the vast majority of people that most of you probably know. Now, some of you who are strength athletes are going to say, well, no, I've seen a lot more. Well, you have, but I promise you most of the people who watch YouTube haven't. I was doing Bulgarian training. Guys, I was hitting a max squat, a max bench, a max overhead press, and a max chin up to 5 or 6 days a week for several months. I think I ran it out for 7 months, actually. And even the worst weeks in that 7 months was hitting 5 max squats every week on different days. Did I get a single injury doing any of that? And I don't want people to think that you can't get overuse injuries doing that, because you can. I had no injuries doing that. When did I actually pull an erector in my back, which was totally separate from just my training? There was another factor going on. I had an infection in my foot, and I was side loading, trying to get around it. I got hurt with 150 pounds less than what I had been squatting for maxes. 150 pounds less. Doing pause work with light from me, right? That's when I got hurt. You guys see me start talking about bicep inflammation, and my tendons started really bothering me when I was doing sets of 6 on weighted chin-ups. I don't have problems from singles. Even now, I come in and I do conjugate. I've been doing conjugate for months now. You ramp to a max. Let me look at this one here. Like, I think on one of these coming up, I hit, 462 on a 12-inch box squat with chains added, right? And people who do box squats understand. Anyone who's done heavy box squats is like, yeah, that's not what people think it is. That's not the same as the 460 squat. In fact, all my clients complain that they can't do anywhere near on a box when I first have them do it that they can do on a back squat. And they get really upset at how light of a weight feels heavy to them. But I do these heavy singles every week. I hit 2 maxes every single week, and I'm not a spring chicken, guys. I'm not some young, spry 25, 30-year-old doing this. Do you see me getting hurt doing it? Not really. Nope. How dangerous could it be? You want to know when it gets dangerous? When you have so horrifically bad form that that's a problem? People who know basic form and who set up safeties and think things through ahead of time, you have a very, very low chance of getting hurt while doing a training max. The training max just means you go above 90% of your true all-out max. I don't mean you psych yourself up and you scream and yell and you cheat and you try to fling the weight up like a retard. I'm saying that all-out heavy lifts that are above 90%, right? To where you are actually straining on a weight that you probably couldn't get a second rep with. A weight that's heavier than your 2 rep max. Right? These things are safe if they're set up correctly. And thing I will point out to people who will say things like, well, I'm training for strength, right? I train power hypertrophy, or any whatever silly template they think they're doing for some sort of concurrent periodization. They don't do heavy singles. Oh, how are you going to develop maximum strength? If you are never pressing or pulling against a maximum weight, how in the world do you intend to develop maximum strength? You can't. Now, do I take a bunch of my clients and for a time have them not do singles? Of course, while I do some base building, sure. But if people really wanted to build a quote-unquote power building program, because you see that term thrown around, why don't you take a hypertrophy program and do some extra singles every week, right? Why don't you come in and hit a max bench, squat, and deadlift of some type, or at least 2 out of those 3, every single week, and then do your hypertrophy work? Wouldn't that give you guys the maximum strength that you want? No, seriously. I mean, people want to take a lot of these things and they say, oh, they want to try to develop this through different systems and they want to do all this work at 85%. And it's like, why? You don't develop maximum strength at 85%. The only time people build more strength running percentages like that is when they compare it for a bunch of sets when compared to lighter weight, right? You see some of these like Dr. Brad's research where a bunch of heavy triples, they gain the same muscle and they gain slightly more strength than doing a bunch of sets 10. But wouldn't they have gotten even better carryover on max strength if they'd done some actual max lifts every week? Of course they would. I'm suggesting that if you want to mix rep ranges, mix rep ranges. I'm suggesting if you want to get really strong while still doing making efficient use of your time with your quote-unquote hypertrophy work, why don't you just do large amounts of training volume to thicken everything up and in the same week hit some really heavy lifts? Yeah? Talking about after you've done a phase of other stuff. Can you come in and do that? Can you just take one of these quote-unquote bodybuilding programs, ones that at least hit every muscle twice a week? You know, you can do any 4-day template. Can you just do those and hit some heavy singles first? Can you do some heavy singles in there and just rotate all the volume in afterwards? That would give you the same effect. You would build maximum strength and you would get all the training volume you need in without the extra fatigue accumulated, and you do it efficiently and get out of the gym faster. Isn't that what essentially Westside is predicated on? I mean, if you think about it, isn't that what the conjugate method is? If you don't look at the dynamic work and you just look at the rest of something like Westside, you're basically ramping to 2 different 1-rep maxes every week, changing lifts at least, never repeating the same thing more than once every 6 weeks, usually longer, hitting these variations so that you learn to strain and lift maximally through at least 2 motor patterns, 2 movement patterns every single week, and then they do very large amounts of specific training volume for general hypertrophy, their weak point training based around what they see the weaknesses on those big lifts, and then of course they do the dynamic work. That's what they're based off of though. I mean, if a person really wanted non-complicated power building programs where they'd want to do quote-unquote power/hypertrophy hybrid programming, which is a silly term, that's really what all real powerlifting is ultimately. Wouldn't you just take one of these big hypertrophy based programs and do singles? You could hit some singles every single week. You could do some maxes. And if you're rotating them enough and you're making sure that you're rotating through a few different lifts, you're making sure that you're not developing overuse injuries, it's perfectly safe. Perfectly safe. In fact, it's considered to be a perfectly valid testing criteria for exercise science. They test people's 1-rep maxes in studies all the time on the bench, the squat, even the leg press. They test their maxes. It makes it through ethics committees. Let that sink in when you start thinking about, oh, it's just dangerous to do this, really, if you know the basic form and you're supervised and you have safeties and spotters, not that dangerous. It really isn't. I mean, it's allowed in research studies. It gets through the ethics review board. It's considered to be a safe, effective way to test someone's strength in human trials. Okay? People are just scared to lift heavy weights. That's really what it is. They're just scared to lift heavy weights. Nothing more, nothing less. All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.